Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. My name is Asad Lalji. Amchi Mumbai, Maximum City, Bombay Meri Jaan, the gateway to India. However you choose to refer to our city, we can all agree that it's a city like none other. A unique melting pot of diverse cultures, religions, sights, sounds, fragrances, and tastes. At Avid Learning, we're fascinated with the wealth of experiences and happenings and encounters that the city offers and the many avatars, histories, perspectives it encompasses. Begun in 2012, our series Multipolis Mumbai, we'd like to think, is a tryst with the city. This series has explored the city's rich past as we've looked forward to new horizons while tracing the journey how colonial Bombay has become the Amchi Mumbai of today. We have facilitated over 43 curated programs across various formats like workshops, panel discussions, city walks, a retrospective at the Kalakura Arts Festival in 2013, a series at the CSMVS. For our second iteration, we began in 2017, where we further explored perspectives of the city, ranging from businesses, brands, philanthropy, art, illustration, poetry, technology, sports, and freedom struggles, and the list goes on. Continuing on this dialogue with the city, today we examine the everlasting legacy and the future trajectory of Mumbai's dance culture. The National Gallery of Modern Art, Mumbai, Ministry of Culture, Government India, and Avid Learning present Multipolis Mumbai, Dance and the City, a panel discussion that will explore the trajectories of dance in Mumbai, the various styles and forms that are being introduced and assimilated into Mumbai's dance landscape and its influences of social media and global forces on the dance in the city. This program is a continuation of Avid's collaboration with the NGMA, and I'd like to thank Mrs. Anita Rupavataram and her team for giving us this opportunity again. It gives me great pleasure. Originally, my speech said I was going to welcome them on stage, but they already are on stage. But our panel of experts, I'm not going to read out their bios because they have been distributed. You all should have them. We are very privileged and proud to have dancer and choreographer Asta Debu, Managing Director of Nitya Anjali Dance Group and Dance Curator Kalakura Arts Festival, Dr. Anona Guha, Ballet teacher and founder of Ballet Festival of India, Ashfia Sarkar Vasi, founder and artistic director of Dance Works and Navdhara India Dance Theatre, Ashley Lobo. And now I'm going to actually welcome our wonderful moderator for the evening, Kathak dancer, director of Amara Nitya Kala Hansa, and curator of Alchemy Wow, Gauri Sharma Tripathi. For more about each of our panelists, you should have bios. Please remember, take out those phones. We heard it going off, surprisingly. Put them on silent and start using them. Start posting, reposting, tagging. Our handle is @AvidLearning and our hashtag is Learning Never Stops. Over to you, Gauri, and look forward to a fascinating discussion.
Namaskar and welcome one and all. I think Amchi Mumbai, we all so resonate with this philosophy and the enigma that Mumbai is. Well, I want to start first in the 70s. When I was a young girl, I used to accompany my mother to this very building. It was called the CJ Hall, and there were all-night concerts which happened here. So this goes back 70s, 60s and 50s. It was that period of time when Bombay really was thriving. The sound of music, bells, rag, and there were all-night concerts happening. And I wanted to just set the scene today. Creating a network of communities, interconnected, an ecosystem of traditions and living experiences, growth, innovation in this land that we call Mumbai. The post-colonial period, I think we saw a refurbished energy in the classical art forms, and I'm just taking a step back to share some anecdotes that I grew up hearing, that some of the gurus who were given patronage by the rulers were then migrating and gravitating to Mumbai because of the Bollywood industry. So the gurus became gurus like Lakshmaraji, Gopi Krishna. All these people were, I think, foundation people who formed the classical dance form getting into the cinema at that period of time. And as we unfold, we will have those discussions as well. And that is where we found a great energy in the city. Also, we found a lot of methodology in which the training started, I think. Earlier, the tradition was very oral, very organic, and much later, post-colonial time, post-independence, when structures were being brought in. So the learning from becoming very, where you surrendered, it became much more questioning and much more method-based learning. And the gurus set up institutions from the Bharatanatyam, set up to Kathak. A lot of them, there were these islands which were spread all over the 7 islands of Mumbai. And that's how the dance culture actually started. We see the different avatars, its relationship with the city, performances, audiences, students, and the response of dance to the space, the constantly changing scapes of Mumbai city. But one thing we want to share, I think we all have that, we love dance, and we are here for that. Our heart beats for it. And that's where I have to now pose the first question to Astaji. I grew up watching him as well, and I think he's a great pioneer in the way he navigated his space from the Kathak to Kathakali and made his own. I want to ask him this question: when he moved in the 70s to Mumbai, what was the dance
scene like? I moved
like?
in the 60s. I moved in 65 from Jamshedpur, where I grew up, and I came here to college, and I was in the commerce sort of genre, and so I was here between 65 and 69, and then prior to that I had Kathak training under the guru of Calcutta, Prahlad Das, father of Chitresh Das. Okay. And yeah, when I came to Mumbai, I was wanted to continue studying Kathak, but my father said no. So, but I still continued whatever I did, and it so happened that I saw Murray Lewis Dance Company from New York come, and that was the first time I really saw. In those days, it was called the Modern Dance Company.
And they performed in Mumbai.
Yeah,
and which theatre was that?
I think, I'm not very sure, but it must have been the Jamshed Bhabha, because it was, and they were in partnership with Alvin Nikolai.
Okay.
So that's when I saw for the first time a group of dancers dancing with abandoned use of space, lights, all that triggered me. And also the fact that during the 4 years in the city, I saw there was some innovation happening in music, in theatre, visual art, but nothing in dance. So that's what got me sort of taking that, okay, I should go overseas and see what it has to offer me.
And the leap of faith happened in the 70s.
69, I left the country. Yeah, on a cargo boat with goats and sheep. And because in those days, you needed permission to leave. And the only loophole was that if you went as a laborer, you could provide it. So I got all my visas, excepting for the US visa, because I was awaiting. And so, yeah, and then arriving at the port of Khorramshahr till the coast of Calais, I hitchhiked through Iran, Turkey, Greece, Italy, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, France, and then on to Dover, and then came to London.
Okay, but I think that journey has continued. We'll come back to that as that.
Sure.
But I think I wanted to really set the scene for our audience, and I think some of them will, when we have the Q&A, can also share some of their experiences of how they saw dance developed in the city. Now let me come to Onona. I know you come from a background where your father, Dr. Guha, set up Nrityanjali way back in the 1965, am I correct? 63. And the main, again, the objective was to bring the classical, the folk, and bring the indigenous art form. So can you perhaps give us a little, feel of what it was at that period of time when your father actually started, because that's where the Gad of the Koli, the tribal dance forms, all that was very much prevalent, and he traveled around to study that together to form this.
So basically, in 63, when he founded the institute, the primary aim was to channelize the energies of the youth into constructive activities through music, dance, drama, and sports, through the performing arts. So that was the basic idea. So on the one hand, naturally he had studied dance, Kathak, and he did, study the folk forms. But the idea was also how to engage the youth in doing something which is going to be relevant, in doing something which helps us grow our personalities, and it could be done through the arts. So that was the basic objective why the institute started. And till date, that has remained our mainstay. So the methodology, yes, is music, dance, drama, and sports, and a lot of it is, a majority of the part is dance. And what happens in both classical and folk is that classical, like you rightly said, is structured, that this is how it is to be, and there is an exam that one can give, and in this year you can finish this much. And folk for a long time has not got its due, I would believe that, because it's by and large has been seen as something, theek hai, folk hai, but classical is intellectual base, and we are using a lot more of the mind, to do it. And whereas folk could be possibly seen more as a lot of physicality rather than utilizing the mind a lot. And but the interesting part about folk has always been that it is always geographic specific, so location specific, and each of the dance form has its reason why it exists. And I think when we perform for foreign delegates, that time the Indian delegates of the event also ask, oh, that is why you use this. That is why we wear the bindi, or that is why we wear this. So actually that becomes very interesting, because both Indians and the foreign delegates actually get a window into what India is about through that.
But if I talk specific of Mumbai, we have the Koli dance, we have the Lavani, but it's not just about Mumbai, it spills over. Is there something that you like to share on that in terms of the authenticity of what belongs to this land?
The interesting part about Mumbai is that while we are in Maharashtra, and while it is supposed to be, a Maharashtrian predominance here, but it's always been very cosmopolitan. So one gets to see the Lavani, one gets to see the Koli, one also gets to see other Indian formats of dance and folk as well, apart from the fact that you're going. So for example, when we perform at the Assamese Bhavan for the cancer patients and do the Bihu dance, you have them getting up and clapping to your bihu in the typical rhythm. So that is, I think, the charm of Mumbai, is that typically what we all know, that you have various cultures coming in, and there is something in it for everybody.
So you're truly adhering that it's a melting pot.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Anura. Ashley, with your journey, I know with Navdhara and Danceworks that the inception started in Delhi, but your journey from Australia. But what was the magnet which said, Mumbai, Meri Jaan, this is where I'm going to be, and that's where I'm going to set back and start my, journey?
I'm originally from Mumbai.
Chembur, too.
Yeah, from Chembur. So I grew up there, and I think I grew up in a family. Mama was an opera singer, and then she was a theatre director later, musical theatre director. So I grew up in this kind of environment. But in India at the time, when I was growing up, there wasn't much opportunity for that area of work. So that's what took me to Australia, because I was passionate about that. I grew up with opera from the time I was a kid, so I grew up with musical theatre, so that's where it started. And then I went to Australia because there was nothing to do. At that time, I think we only had one channel, Doordarshan. So it was very, very different for some of the younger people out here. They wouldn't even relate, So that's how it started. And then I came back to India, and I think I came to Delhi because I was away from the country for about 12 years, so I'd lost track of what was happening. By the time I came back to India, it was a very different India. So I couldn't connect or relate. So, but my wife was from Delhi, so I thought, okay, there's one of us that knows. And she just left India just 2 years before that. So, so from Delhi, and then I came to Mumbai as the next progression after that, or 4 years later.
But there was a conscious decision to set base in Mumbai.
Yeah, I think, no, actually I don't even know if it was a conscious decision. I think it just happened. I think my whole life just happens like that. Everything just goes. I go there and then I say, okay, let me try this, and that's how it's happened. So I don't think Mumbai was a conscious decision for me, honestly. It was something that just happened.
Yeah, I think when I was talking to Ashley the other day, he said my getting into dance was also an accident. It just happened. So I think sometimes these opportunities come in and you don't realize, and you build on that. So it's been, I think, quite a strong route for Mumbai dancers here. So thank you for thinking of Mumbai out of Delhi box.
There's someone up there who's accidentally doing a lot of good things. Yeah, thank you.
Dear Ashifa, I know for you, it's a journey from New York.
No, from Louisiana, actually.
Okay, and into Mumbai. And Mumbai is now a base.
Mumbai's home. It's
Mumbai's home.
It's funny because my parents actually grew up in Mumbai and migrated to the U.S. in 1970. And when I moved here in 2005, I thought I'd stay here for a year or two. And 14 years later, I guess I'm still here. So it is home very much. So I've come full cycle, actually. My parents are there and I'm here.
And ballet has been your mantra. That's what you have studied, and that's what you're teaching here.
Yes.
How do you feel in terms of how the city has cradled you in this journey here? Because ballet they are ballet dancers, but it's not such a strong base here. So how has that been, navigating that journey?
I think for me as a teacher, it's been a way to find myself back home. So whenever I'm in the studio, I immediately find peace. I find myself comfortable. I feel like I've come home in a way. So whenever I've taught younger kids, whenever I've taught older kids, when I've taught completely newbies, I've been able to find a way to bring what I love to the students, to the studio. Yeah. It's given me peace. It's always been something that I've been able to find comfort in. If it's been a few months since I've had a class and I walk into the studio and I'm a little anxious of, will I be able to find my rhythm again? Within 5 minutes, I found my rhythm and I feel like I'm at home again. So it's home, yeah.
Fantastic. I think this brings me to the point that I think all of you, Astad especially, and Ashley, and for yourself, you all, and myself, we have navigated different geographical spaces, and Mumbai still becomes a base that we come back to. Of course, Astad might have something else to say about that, but I just want to understand, how do you see Bombay as a cultural hub, as a place which gives you, if I may say, the bread and butter, the economics of the cultural scene here, as opposed to something happening in London or in Paris or in New York? How is the city really holding the gravity of the city? And whether that's something you feel that it has given. And I think it's important for us and artists to understand that. Whether the city is really giving us back.
I think it's different for different people and different for different disciplines. I think it varies from discipline to discipline. For the kind of work I do, forget Mumbai, I don't think in the country we get supported by anything. It's only recently, I think last year was the first time my kind of work got supported by the government. But before that, unless you come out of an intrinsically Indian classical base or an Indian folk base, yeah, we've not been supported. But so this time, like I think last year before last, was the first time I think I got empaneled as an artist. It was a cultural thing, which was for me was like, okay, that's different. They finally, also seeing this as art. So yeah, but I think with classical, typically like every other country in the world, I think they are supported. They have a certain amount of support. Mumbai, I think some of you who are in the thing would probably be better equipped.
Asaji?
Well, my relationship with the city has been a stormy one. When I returned after having been away, for 8 years, and it took me a year because when I came, I was the lone wolf, and pretty much for 10 years, I was in the Indian classical dance gurus, I was called the enfant terrible, and so it took me a year to get my first platform, and it was thanks to my friend, the late Satyadev Dubey, and Jennifer Kendall, and Prithvi had just opened. So basically, through persistence and through the years, I really cultivated an audience who came to see a solo performer. And again, yes, the things that I did was way ahead of my time. With dancers, I had very little communication, and even still today, it's sad that I really hardly communicate with dancers in the city. Also the fact that it's a base for me. I work a lot, I've collaborated, and my work in Manipur for the last 14 years, or then my work with the street children of Delhi in the Salam Balak Trust, or my collaborations with different performing arts discipline, but not with dance, Indian classical dance, or even today there are contemporary dance companies in the city. But and then also the fact that I do still continue to work overseas on a lot of international projects, because that has always been I began my career working there, and it still continues, and it's always wonderful to be challenged. So I would say in the city, only I would say the National Center for the Performing Arts have been very supportive, and this is my 40th year being associated with them. And again, they've invited me to be a part of the 50 years of celebration. So every time I come up with a new production, I know that NCPA is there. After that, nobody's inviting me in the city, and yes, sometimes I produce myself, but now it's like 50 years, and still, like, if you got to go and ask, so that's a bit of a disappointment. But by the grace of God, as I said, other parts of the world are open, and that's home.
I think that's a very fair comment. I think the city does need combination of more cohesive and collaborative spaces where dancers and artists can talk. We were just discussing that as well, where we don't have that opportunity very often, and the ease at which we can have the programming done rather than just have one big institution working on that, or the festivals that come up. But Anuna, what would your take be on this in terms of how the economy of dance and how those strands are working?
In 2006, I did my first PhD in sociology, and the topic was dance in the urban culture. And the primary objective was, at that point in sociology, is to study what is the life of a dancer, how economically feasible as a profession it is, me being a dancer myself, and what is the status of the dancer in the marriage market, and how do men face the entire thing. Not the marriage market only, but the rest of the economics of it. And what I found then, and what the study continues, because it's a continuous journey, is at that point what I found primarily is that most women dance is a very good qualification to get married, and to say that, oh, you dance, fantastic. Okay, but if you are घर की बहू हो तो आपको क्यों dance करना? So once you are in the family and you're the daughter-in-law or whatever, yes, why do you need to, and why do you need to do it that way? So most women gave up dancing after getting married. It was just sort of the done thing. Or over a period of time, you just sort of maintain the peace of the family and you sort of give it up. And for men, it has always been difficult, because I've seen my father struggle for years. And I think that's the time he already told me that, take it up as a hobby. You love it. Great. Make sure you get qualified everywhere else, because you might start feeling frustrated later. And I found that to be a very practical viewpoint from his point. So he always had his printing and publishing house supporting our institute for these we are 56 now, so for 46 years, last 10 years through corporate trainings and all that, since I'm also a corporate trainer, we are able to sustain. Now, in the, say, economic market, teaching classical dance is today a very, very economically viable, sort of a job, if I might put it that. I know of people who teach classical dance once or twice a week and are earning close to 30,000 a month. And so today it is even acceptable in the families that even after, marriage, I'm still teaching dance, you're getting the moolah in, so it's all right. And the demand today of, the number of dances that we have is so much more than what the opportunities of performances are. So that is a bit of a, dilemma or a bit of a difficulty because you have too many people there. Many years back, one had Padmashri Damayanti Joshi dancing, or you had Sitara Deviji dancing, and you had every music conference having their performances. So you knew that you would always have somewhere to go. Today, irrespective of the number of festivals, there are so many more people who are doing it. So absorbing that becomes difficult. But I think as far as teaching dance is concerned, for the ones who really want to, you have to be good. I mean, everything is about,
Sure.
you have to have the knowledge, and that has to be sustainable. Without that, you can't just, even money doesn't come in that easily. Yeah. But I think that is feasible because with again the TV and the television shows, and more people with reality shows, whether one agrees with it, doesn't agree with it, there is a lot of interest in, okay, I also got to do this. So at least 3 years of dancing, people end up doing. By 9th, 8th standard, people start quitting. That is what we see because you have your board exams to study for.
But that's an interesting point because that's my next question coming in. But Ashifa, maybe would you like to add to that?
I actually wanted to kind of agree with what she
Sure.
was saying, that in terms of ballet schools, I believe they're quite lucrative. But once you hit your 8th, 9th, 10th, and people want to pursue it as more than just a hobby, it becomes very difficult to find the support, not only from your school, but for the ability to become a professional. Like the training in the city, at least that I'm aware of, basically stops at the recreational level. There is not the ability to pursue it as a profession. You have to go overseas. And even as for the Ballet Festival of India and just in general, when you think about dance festivals, people have to become very creative to get patronage. It's not something, like you said, that the government is easily willing to support because it's not an indigenous, it's not a classical Indian form. So support financially for ballet at a professional level requires creativity.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think my other question was whether democratization of dance has blurred the boundaries and it has become much more popular. Because more people are learning, but whether you're able to sustain it as a livelihood. And I think that's a discussion which was happening all across the world, whether we can encourage the younger dancers. And actually, maybe you can add to that because you train so many young people who are going through the dance works repertoire, whether they are able to become full-time dancers and whether the city is able to, if we produce so many dancers, are they able to sustain themselves in the ecosystem that sits in?
I think it's a twin-edged thing. There's one side where you have things like you were saying, like the reality shows, which are creating an awareness and creating a hunger, for dance, which we didn't have before. So dance is kind of, in India, has started to get the image of dance is changing in a particular segment of society. So there's a lot of aspiration for my child to now be on stage or to become someone, which was not there before because it didn't have the platform or the visibility. But that's changed now. Having said that, the platform can also create confusion because you can only put forth what's available. So if I have to talk about like the field of dance that I'm in, the training in that field is very limited in the country. So the exposure of what comes on stage or on TV is at a very nascent level. So and that can then be multiplied many times over, and then that becomes the norm. So then it's very difficult if you're actually teaching something accurately for people to know the difference between what the original form was and then the hybrid of it. Yeah, so there's almost like a contemporizing of something without actually having understood it. I think a contemporizing comes from an exit of something you've already understood, and then you've moved on from that knowledge. But over here, before the knowledge has been acquired, people are contemporizing, which to me, I think at some level doesn't make sense.
That's a very fair to add to that?
Yes, I think, that's one thing is that I have always completely believed, or the way I've been brought up, exactly the way that, in your family, you've brought up in that environment. My mother's a singer, father has been in this field. And education is something that we always talk about, is there's a difference between literacy and education. One might need to read and write, know to read and write, but being educated is a different concept, And so the outlook is not, needs to be about, do I really know the form properly to really go out there? But today everything has to be very, very, very fast paced. I've done this much, and why can I not, go and showcase that? Nothing wrong with showcasing, but there are certain things which need a little bit of time, right? One can't be in the, reach the 10th standard without going to the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th standard. So it has to be a chronological growth. But I think these are also times where, you always, in every city, every country, one goes through these phases, then spurts, and something comes up and then comes down and comes up and comes down. So these are phases.
It's interesting that, as it's called, jack of all trades and master of none, in our classical dance form, I think all the gurus will say that it's the rigor, rigor, rigor. You stick on to one and you do your riyas and you keep moving on. So I think it's really lovely to see that these different tentacles of dance continue to coexist in Mumbai. And I think there is respect and space for all these practices to happen in their own spaces. And I think that is very special. I think it will come back to that in terms of how the media and the social media and the television plays a very important role in, again, I'm using the word democratization of the art form. But I want to come to Astaji, because I know your art form, the modern way of interpreting, the Kathak training and the Kathakali, and making your own. It's your own voice that comes out. And how performing in the proscenium, which is what was a post-colonial strand that happened to all the classical forms, it was given a formality. You have managed to move beyond the boundaries of the stage to a site-specific way of looking at it. Perhaps it's something that you have been brave in adorning the two strong art forms of Kathakali and Kathak, and voicing it yourself, and thus, geographically shaping it in the world.
Well, yes. I mean, with my training in Kathak and then having been overseas for 8 years and have had the opportunities of studying certain dance forms, not for a very long period also, because of, constraint of finance and all that. But still, there were certain styles which, like Indonesia was very influential. Japan, the Buto was influential. And in the US, one had the opportunity of being mentored by Alison Chase of the Pilobolus Dance Company, or having had the opportunity of being with Pina Bausch at the Wuppertal Dance Theatre. So I really had these wonderful experiences being with great choreographers and getting an insight as to how they choreographed, because I was basically, and in many ways I'm still a solo performer. I mean, I do work with groups. I do not have a particular dance company as such, but I do work with various performing art disciplines. And what challenges me, that what the discipline has to offer, like an example in Manipur, I started with the Thangta practitioners, the martial art forms, and looking at them, and so I felt that I could use their technique into my choreography. And again, I was very blessed that the guru did allow me, because Manipur is a very closed society, but fortunately my sort of fame had preceded me, or my seriousness in my art form had preceded me, and subsequently I got very much involved with the drummers, the Pungchalam drummers. So again, there I was able to weave, but keeping in mind, keeping the fact that I kept their tradition, and I didn't sort of, the challenge for me was to transmit my form of minimal movements, taking away the drums from them, or taking away the swords and the sticks, which were their sort of basic tool for which they worked with. So that was a challenge. And there was a weave which really sort of came cohesive and became one, or even working with puppets, So So always that has been, and it's for the first time now that this weekend I leave to work in Chicago, where I'm working with the Bharatanatyam dance company. But at the same time, I will retract. I did a work, The Tempest, with Anandavalli in Australia, the Lingayam dance company. So that was my first with the Bharatanatyam dance company. But it was more of dealing with Tempest as a theme, whereas with Hema, it's interconnect in I, and there we're really having Carnatic musicians, and we're having, so it's really I've already started working, and the fact that again, my background, my technique is more Indian classical, and from there I've taken it on, and through the years I've discovered my body, and I know what my strengths are. So with that I've woven a language which is my own, that's my signature. And also it becomes like people say, why haven't you started a school? Because it's, first of all, teaching is a great responsibility. And I teach, and I'm supposed to be a good teacher, what people say, but my heart is into performing, and my heart is in mentoring. And I've mentored, worked in the field of deaf for the last 30 years. It started with a group in Calcutta, then it came a group in Chennai, then also having worked 7 years in Washington, D.C. at the world's largest university of deaf Gallaudet. And now, for the first time, I would say, I have received a corporate sponsorship or support for 3 years, which has never ever happened with my new work of developing the deaf schools from St. Stephen's School. And I'm very happy to say the BNP Paribas Bank.
Paribas Bank, yes.
Has sort of,
I feel happy about that because we have had these conversations many a time with Astad about sponsorship, and that's something that is very deficient in the system as well.
No, it's not so much sponsorship, it's more the support.
Support.
Yes,
of course.
you need a support when you're initiating, you may get, I recall once, I won't mention the corporate, they were supporting my deaf work, and I went to them, and the corporate communication said, oh, we're not into deaf anymore, we're into street children. So, so if you have a street children project, we'll look at it. And that's how the Salam Balak Trust kids, but again, it was just for a project. They did not continue. The fact that they know that the work was being continued, but no, that was it. So it's just this one little handout, and that little handout is nothing compared to, in order for you to evolve, develop with this, so that has been my journey, and
But
sort
I think
of.
it's a good stepping stone.
But at the same time, I must say, in the city there are a lot of private donors.
Yes.
I have a dance foundation, and it's more them than really. Well, I will also say the real the one corporate is that the Tata Steel company. I grew up in Jamshedpur, so they have been supportive. Not as much. Again, it all depends on the whims and fancy of a CEO. So whether the CEO likes it or not. But yeah. So yes, I have managed, but I've always been, pushing myself,
But I think, let's be fair, there is a movement, which is good. And I think all the younger dancers, and we should make a note of it, that possibly these are the new corporates that one should approach as well. This should become a platform of sharing.
I don't think so. They're going to come back with their door slammed on their face.
No, I think more the merrier. I think if the demand is there, then I'm sure people will start focusing on that. But let me come to Anuna and Ashifa, because I think from the corporate sponsorship and that journey comes thought of how do you, because both of you are involved in festivals, and of course, Anuna, with you, 4 years of Kala Ghoda Arts Festival, which is a cross-arts festival, site-specific work, not specific to a particular space. How has the funding and the economics of that festival, managed to keep the art forms together? And also how you're programming it in order to bring a wider scape of performers to the city. So that's my main thing in terms of how do you level out and allow everybody to be programmed?
So this is now the 5th year that I'm going to be curating the fest. And we've always, the fest is now in its 21st year, Kalagoda Arts Festival. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to perform at the Kalagoda Festival right since inception. So by the time I took over as the curator, it was always a joy to give back to the fest in terms of, you know, whatever I could, yes, the enjoyment or the joy or the romance, the love, whatever it is, because it's a completely amazing experience to, you know, have an audience of the kind that we have at Kalagoda, which is a mix of so-called class, mass, if I may use those terms, and it's fantastic because the response is just very, very spontaneous. So we have always, you know, we've had our sponsorships with the media houses, and everywhere, I think, when now the fest is its 21st festival, 21st year, so over the years, it's touted as, you know, Asia's biggest multicultural festival. So naturally, now when you're at the particular phase, things become much easier. But, you know, when you start, it starts small and then one really expands. So naturally, for everything, there is always a limited budget. Budget is always limited. And so within that, I think that is something that one does even within your own household, right? I'm a little practical on these things, is where even everybody has a household for your budget, saying that I'm going to spend X amount of money this month, or I'm not going to, or I don't care. If you don't have a budget, that's fantastic. But I think to keep money, even in big corporate houses, even if it's CSR, I've learned one thing very strongly from my father, is that rationalization of cost is very important. So how much ever you earn, if there is no rationalization of cost, you can't run. So that's typically how the festival also has to run. So budget is there, and the committee has always been very clear that we, since we are catering to a Mumbai audience, and since we are also catering to an open air setting, with the changing scenario, it is always a mix of classical, contemporary, folk, modern dance forms. And you know, yes, typically one can call me a classical dancer. I've been trained in ballroom as well, but I've always looked at dance as a genre. So it has not, never been for me as this is better, that is lesser, that is, you know, whatever. Every dance needs a lot of skill, and every dancer brings something depending on their individual skill, not only as, you know, what the dance as such entails. So we have always tried to have a mix so that the audience in, say, about 1.5 hours get to see at least 3 different genres of dancing. And they go back, because the festival is free for everybody. There are no tickets. So, you know, it should, you go back saying for 1.5 hours, yes, you can sit there, watch it, watch 3 different kinds of dance forms, and go back home. An auditorium setting is a different kind of an offering. And when you're at the fest with your art installations across
almost like a site-specific thing that Asad and we were discussing as well, because a lot of his work has moved out of the stage and performing in different open spaces. So I think that's something very special. And I think it also allows people to come and understand it. The classical dance form especially used to be on the stage. And you know, you're far away, you're not able to understand, you don't want to reach out. And I think it's important when we have festivals like this, that it allows that spirit to come and sit and watch the best, and not the best, maybe perhaps some lines blur up and some techniques blur up as well. But it's a space, and I think this is what the city again provides.
And also, I think
dimensions on that.
You know, in terms of the kind of dancers who come in, it's a mix, right? From somebody who's very senior to someone, you know, you have a lot of youngsters. And a lot of youngsters who are trying to be there and prove to the world that, look, I'm good and I exist. I think that's very important to have it. So you have the senior artists, you have the experienced artists, and the upcoming artists, as we say. So that becomes a very good combination, and that's across dance styles that we follow.
Yeah. I think it's a brilliant way of programming. I think we should have more of such events and festivals in the city to encourage a younger generation also to believe and learn dance forms. Ashifa, I know you had the first ballet festival 2 years back,
2 years back,
which was much more in a closer premise. So would you share that with the audience today?
So the first version of the Ballet Festival of India ended up being more of a conference for the participants who came and attended the classes and the programming for the 3 days that it was held. The one angle that we were not able to bring that year was a public angle. So we target 3 different groups of people. One are students, one are teachers, and one are the public audience. So people who will watch the dance form that we're talking about, in this case, ballet. We were not able to reach that 3rd target group that year, and that's something that I'm working on for the next one, which is hopefully will happen next year. For the Ballet Festival of India, the programming is very different from, say, a Kalagada festival. I am looking to bring professional ballet dancers into the country, which is, at the moment, doesn't exist within India. So it's hard for me to find professional dancers in the country who I can bring to perform. There are a handful across the country that I would say, yes, they have trained to a very high level, and yes, they would be very lovely on stage. Because part of the reason I wanted to create the Ballet Festival of India was to bring up the technical and artistic level of ballet in the country, right? To show students, teachers, and the public audience that this is what ballet truly means. So as Ashley was talking about earlier, it's a double-edged sword, right? People want to do it, but they don't necessarily know how to do it. And at least for ballet, because it's such a classical form, I think of it as a language, right? And when you're learning ABC, that's great, but you can't just put words together and make a sentence. There's grammar involved, there's nuance to it, and until you actually learn the basics properly, I find it very difficult to then create from it. It limits your vocabulary, it limits your understanding. You don't know what you're breaking, you don't know what you're creating. So at least for ballet, I'm kind of a purist in that sense, that I feel like you need to have a very strong fundamental technical base and artistic base before you can move into contemporary choreography or other means of expressing yourself using ballet as your base. So to that end, I wanted to be able to bring a platform that had that high level of artistry and technique for people to see. So that's something that I'm actually hoping to be able to incorporate for the next festival. But because of that, you're bringing people from overseas, which becomes a very different ballgame in terms of curating a program. It's more of what is your budget, what can you afford, what's possible. It's not the other way around of I want to showcase all of these people. So it's a very different sort of programmatic programming.
Yeah, but I think it's innovative. You know, you need to have those opportunities and also bring. Sometimes it's nice to bring something from the outside when there's a demand for it,
Yeah.
and then you can build up on those strands.
There have actually been a few ballet performances in the city, and I jump at those chances. Not only are there the movie screenings at NCPA.
A few of them here as well. Ballet dancers, yeah.
There, not only the Bolshoi Theater screenings at NCPA, but there have been Swan Lake came, and the Paris Night. It wasn't the Paris Opera Ballet, but it was basically pieces that are somehow linked to Paris, right? They were completely different in terms of the quality and technical excellence that was available, and the tickets were the same price. In fact, the one that was, to me, poor quality was far more expensive. And so it's very disheartening when you see that so much is being poured into bringing something to the city. You wish it was of better quality, since people are paying 5,000-10,000 rupees for a ticket, and they're seeing something that's really subpar. There can be so much better quality that comes to the city.
Great. We hope to see more of it, and I think then the audiences will be able to judge it better.
Yes.
In a way. Let me now build up on the next strand of innovation in the dance form. So we have spoken about the economics of it and blurring of the lines and learning the tradition to the fullest, making it accessible, making it a public space. But I want to come here to Ashley and then to Astad, that within the training that you have done, now you're innovating and you're bringing the prana paint. I would like to, it'll be really nice to share, because you have the gad, the root is there, and from there is the upaj, as we call it in Kathak, the nuances and the novel ideas of coming out of it, which is still very much tucked back to the ground and to the roots. Please share with us about that conceptual idea of innovation within what you're doing.
A few years ago, I think about 4, 5, 6 years ago, I had a neck injury, and I couldn't have it. It came down to surgery, and I didn't want to have surgery. So I spoke to someone, and they said, maybe you should do yoga. So I went out and went to a teacher training for yoga, like a whole month of intensive yoga. And part of it was teacher training. And in that whole process, I managed to heal my neck, and then I connected with yoga. I connected with the sense of breath. And while we were doing that, I suddenly thought it might be a good idea to figure out how to completely combine the breath and the movement in one, completely. We hear, like even in contemporary dance, you use breath to move the body. But I think when I did yoga, I understood it. I truly understood it. And for me, I think breath, prana paint is basically a painting with breath. So the breath is inside the body works as a brush. So I can move the body, or I can paint air with it. I can use air to connect with air through the body. So I'm connecting with the audience through, so I'm using my breath through the body, pushing the breath out to connect with you. And that immediately engages, as opposed to just movement. So for me, the way we do it is I get the dancers into a meditative space through breath, and then make them start to paint the floor with skin. The skin engages the fascia engages the muscles, then the bones, and the body ignites itself and moves by itself. And I think once you've understood vocabulary, then you allow the body to do where it wants to go, with the knowing that the body already has the tools to do what it has to do. And I think in that process, I think you're more studying the body rather than telling it. You're more listening to it than telling it, and just observing it and allowing it to manifest in its own way. And I think just one thing I'd like to add, just go back to, what Ashifa was saying, was that it's funny because I started Navdhara with a sense of contemporary dance, and yes, we do ballet. We do every day the dancers do ballet like they do Kathak with you. But I think in the last 2 years, because I've been overseas working with ballet companies, I've suddenly realized that, instead of moving from a contemporary company that does ballet, what I miss is a ballet company that does contemporary. And so that's my whole focus now in the next 2 years, is to get a ballet company that can do contemporary. And I'm taking the whole of Navdhara and flipping it into that. So that's why I was just telling you, I'm bringing in a dance from the Cuban ballet, principal dance from the Cuban ballet, because I really want that quality of ballet in the country. And then I can contemporize that. Yeah. So I think we're on the same page.
So I can come in. Some of it's the form, the grammar, the Tagda grammar, which has to be, it has to be rooted, and then you can look in beyond that. Asaji, with your work, I know innovation has been, and I know you are a soloist. How do you level your passion and your creativity in terms of creation of the novelty and bringing in newer ways of looking to what you have already been doing? What is new? What is new? Is a collaboration when you do with the artist brings newer things, or is it you yourself and your body which brings a newer idea, and then you pick up that collaboration to take beyond that? Because it's creditable, so many years of even running the passion by yourself is incredible. When you collaborative space, it's easy. We all can navigate together, we move together. But to do it as a soloist, to keep that riyaz and the rigor, I think I salute you, all of us. I think we need to give him a big hand on this. It's not an easy journey, but keeping that passion alive, what is it every day in the morning, Asaji?
Every day in the morning I look at my WhatsApp or what's there, So, no, but I mean, it's always been a passion, and still, like, there is fire in it, and there is sort of always ideas are moving. And a body is like a machine, and I'm 72 now, and so the body also speaks when you're working out yourself. And sometimes while working out, certain things you discover, again, as I said, basically I'm just by myself. I don't really have a group who will be there. But now that I have been working with the dancers that I've mentored, and right now in my new work, I've working with all dancers, and it's wonderful to see some of like 3 boys from Islam Balak. One is Shamshul, and the other one is Rohit and Vicky. Because of the fact that they've been working and they've been learning, and my style is very minimal. It's not that, jump from one to the other, which, each creative person has his or her own signature, but my signature has become very minimal. And being very still, it's more difficult to be holding a stillness than to be sort of working out whatever the choreographer wants. So yes, so I also, like a couple of years ago, I was amazed, and it was a discovery that I work a lot with my back, and it's very strong, and the back is like the backbone of my choreography. And again, I'm sort of in part. So, and then when I'm working, right now I'm working with dancers, but even if I'm working with other disciplines, my sort of style is sort of introduced to them, and sort of they sort of in turn are able to assimilate in, and then, as I said, another vocabulary emerges. So one is sort of, and the fact again that I didn't answer your question, yes, I mean, one has performed the procedure, but spaces speak to me. You know, spaces, you need to take the dance out. I mean, I recall a couple of years ago, it was my very first Kala Gora festival, and I danced in this very sort of gallery, and I called it 5-2, dance on 3 levels. So, you know, I started the bottom, and then I came up and danced on the banister, and then I moved, I had a special stage constructed on 1 level. And so it's sort of, you brought the space into your work, and the space also helps you to create. I'm not just using, or even if you're working, say, with a visual artist, you're not using his or her painting or sculpture as a piece of adornment. That piece, like I did a work with the painter Jayashree Chakrabarti, you know, very recently for the Jhangan Nicholson Gallery at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum. You know, so whoever I'm collaborating with also speaks, and in turn also, and yes, one is always thinking of how my body is going to react, respond with the music. The music is extremely important for me. One sort of choreographs without music, but at the same time, when the music is selected, comes in, then adds another input and takes the creation to another level.
This is great. Music as a response, breath as a response. From a collective to an individual taking that leap of faith, and to Anuna, Nityanjali's work, which is again in the collective, of how do you see dance as, if I may say, therapy, or really building the community or bringing a social service angle. How have you all used dance as a tool for that strand of development and really bringing up youngsters to work in that strand of dance? I think that's where Nityanjali is really holding the torch.
We work at 2 levels. So for example, when we are doing the classical, the ones who come to learn classical, one has to get trained in the solo format. Because
may I interrupt? This is predominantly Bhandup, Mulund, that area, or it's spread quite a bit?
It's spread, so you have from Vasai, you have from Virar, you'll have from Goregaon, so it's across Mumbai. But so when we have the classical students, it has to necessarily follow the classical solo dance format, because that is where classical is. I mean, even though now you have more and more group performances, but classical dancers should be able to dance for at least an hour and a half on their own on stage, expected. That's a different story now, it doesn't happen as much, but typically that's what is the expectation. And in the folk and the creative dance formats, or the dance dramas that we do, those are naturally group presentations. So 2 things happen. So on Sundays, Dr. Gohat has been grooming the youth now for 56 years, which has been free of cost. So the students come there, 14 plus. Yes, we are particular about taking them only after an interview process, because, otherwise attitude, free hai na, chalta hai. So you don't want to get there, and it feels good. In fact, our director of operations, Mr. Girish Dalvi, joined the institute as a Bharatanatyam student. He then was absorbed into the Sunday class, because we found him to not just be a great dancer. For us, it's very important. Skill can be cultivated, but what kind of a person you are is very important. So if the person is a good human being, good soul, everything else can be added. That's our philosophy. And he studied his engineering, and today he's devoted his entire life to the institute, because this is what I'm born for. For me, one can always say that I am the daughter and I need to you've taken it up because you're the daughter. But that was just to say that there are others who have found their, I'm not sure if we call it the calling of life or whether the purpose is purposeful. And these students are groomed in dance, in music. Very important part is the values, because we believe that if the values are strong, one will be able to sustain with the skill over a period of time. And the interesting part is that on Sundays we have a whole lot of people who have a lot of other professions. Some are architects, some are clinical psychologists, they are bankers, but they all love dance. And every Sunday they spend time, and that's the troupe which performs professionally across, whether abroad, whether in India. And then we have dance classes of Kathak, Bharatanatyam, music, which run at 100 rupees a month, and people do their graduation through it. And so, because Bhandup, when the institute started, was an area where it catered to a population where people couldn't really afford it. So it started with 25 rupees a month. Or free, and 75. So till date, dance and music are expensive hobbies. One needs to spend a lot of money to do it. So money should not be a reason to not learn the form if one wants it, and which is the philosophy. Is it difficult to sustain? Of course it's difficult to sustain. Do we work hard to do that? You were talking about grants. Our sir believes very strongly that we don't take donations. We are eligible for government grants, we don't take them, because he believes earn your own living. How long are you going to go and say, mujhe paisa do to main chalunga? So it's again, each to his own, each one has their own thought process of doing things. But we have been lucky that now all our teachers are homegrown. So for Kathak, for Bharatanatyam, for folk, for creative, who have been there for at least 20 years. And today they are taking things, and they're doctors as well. So it's a mix.
I think it's the accessibility of the art form, and really, again, coming back, we are blurring the boundaries. Earlier, again, it was you were training an art form, and that was it. You were not allowed to go out and explore something else. So this really brought sort of a melting pot back again. I'm using these words again. And I think one major strand, which is of our Bollywood, that really brought in so much funneling of the art forms together. And I think it became a physical expression of not really saying it's Kathak, Bharatanatyam, Manipuri or street, but I think it's a Bollywood is a language of its own. And I'm going to get in with Ashley here because...
I was just going to say, I remember now how I came to Bombay. I came to Bombay on a Bollywood film. That was the first time.
That was a magnet. Yeah. That was a magnet. And I think that's how most of our Kathak gurus, my mother is here, Lakshmi Maharaji, and films like Pakiza, Mughal Azam, these were the old films where the gurus came in to earn money. Because at that time, the patronage had gone off. The government institutions were still not up and running where they could fund them. Teaching was sort of happening, but not really major. They were not very street smart. I still remember Lakshmi Maharaji, class ke liye bhi paisa nahi lete the. They would just teach because it was such a passionate thing for them to train.
Can I just add there? And I think that was also a time when dance was not seen as people from good families do. So it wasn't really seen as, okay, today you have people coming, queuing up, saying, okay, I want to learn dance. But in those days, you want to learn dance? Tum nachogi? So, nachega to even worse. So, so it couldn't be there. So that's how it used to be. So it was a very difficult time for them. So sorry.
I know it's great because I think we have moved on, and it's so fascinating to see the history of dance in the city. We could just go on and on with so many anecdotes and references that have been shared with us. But I want to bring, Ashley, as you said, this was the magnet which pulled you here. How do you see dance in cinema today? Whether it's classical, contemporary, whether it really has a
I think Bollywood
soul.
film has a it's a mixture. It's everything's a mixture. But if I had to break it down, there's probably four kind of strands you could break it down. If you forgive my classification, one is like a song like a Saroji would do, which is like more in the classical form, like a Dola Re or something like that.
Which has
it draws from that.
Yeah,
it draws its inspiration from the classical forms. One would be like another genre would be what comes from the folk, like your Nagada or your Moja, those, or your Dola Baje or something like that. Yeah. And the third one, I think, is what I call free expression. It's called Visarjan dance. And Imtiaz, my friend, calls it jungly dance. It's like you just go out there and you just express yourself crazily, just feeling the sound. And I think the fourth genre, I think, comes from like an international borrowing. And we've had that for years, like years ago, I think the yardstick for international dance in Indian Bollywood film would have been probably Jitendra, Jituji. Then it was Mithun Chakravarti, Govinda, then Ritik, and then Shahid, and it kept moving. Like now there's like ABCD, and now two of our kids, Gully Boy, and two of our kids, and now they're making a ballet film. So things have shifted. Things are constantly shifting in that genre, but it's going to keep shifting.
I want to also bring Astad in. So Bollywood has been, but I think social media and how dance has gone really, and Ashifa, I'll be shifting to you on that, your comments on that as well, is are we changing ourselves so that we have these TikTok capsules plotted in? Is the patience of audiences shifting? Are we gravitating towards a fast culture of the city? Thehrao hai? Are we holding on? So these are some thoughts which are crossing, whether social media is an asset or is it really hindering the way we pause and we view the art form?
Well, the social media is really an important tool. It really reaches out. What you present and what is your content then depends on the viewer, the reader, whether they want to pursue it. I'm not very active, but at the same time, yes, I do sort of post on Facebook and WhatsApp, but I'm not on sort of Twitter and Instagram. I'm not really into that. And yes, it gives you also a window of, you see a lot of colleagues or dancers presenting their work. It gives you, it's sort of as a teaser, that this is what I'm going to present, and that sort of makes you excited and say, okay. So yeah, one has to accept these tools because it's the way of, in a way, it's also survival. If you're not using the social media because you really don't have the money to buy sort of advertising space in the newspapers, that's totally out. So this is one way of getting your work across. In fact, I was talking to someone the other day, and he said, you should have a mailing list, and I'm really a one-man show. I do it. I don't have a manager, I don't have a secretary, it's everything, I wear many, many hats. And I said, well, and I mentioned the dance, I'm not going to say, and they said, oh, this dance is so, organized. She says what she is going to be, what her thing. Then I said, well, she comes from a very well-heeled family, and she has a bevy of people working for her. So it's just for her to sort of, okay, you see the social media, you're seeing this, you're seeing that, my manager's there. And she has the luxury of just working and creating. So good for her, But at the same time, I don't do badly myself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that, as I said, there's space for everything and everyone. It's great. Ashifa?
I think social media is, again, a double-edged sword. Personally, I absolutely love it because it fulfills my daily need for watching ballet, right? I can watch all the professional dancers from across the world. I can watch short clips, I can watch longer clips. You can use YouTube where you get the longer videos. So on a personal level, I think it's phenomenal. As a teacher, I'm very wary of it because if a student doesn't understand what to watch, it's harmful, right? So not only is it they're watching these completely contorted bodies that are completely unnatural and thinking that's what's normal or that's where I need to go. But also I've had students say, yeah, I learned how to do this on YouTube, and that just kind of scares me because you can hurt yourself so badly. So it's a double-edged sword because also if you do know what you're watching, if you can kind of screen what you're watching and watch what's quality, what's important in terms of the technique, as a teacher and a student having access to that is invaluable. You can watch ballets, you can watch professional dancers, but I get nervous when people cannot kind of differentiate between what's good and what's bad.
Yeah, so there's a double-edged sword.
Absolutely.
there.
And it's free marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's, as they call the guru Google, that you can really get
I think it's also helped like dancers who would normally not have the resources do have that tool, you know, to build their own profiles for themselves. So I'm really bad at it, but like, you know, I know the youngsters, all the young dancers who dance with me, they always tell me, come on, Ashley, you got to get good with this. I'm just like, okay, you do it. You know? But they're really good with it, and they know how to build, you know, their profiles. And so it's a useful tool for someone who's starting out to get that. You know, otherwise it's only like Astad was saying, someone who has resources. So yeah,
Exactly.
it's good.
Exactly. So before I open the house and questions, and I hope you have a dialogue that we can have with the esteemed panelists, I just want to just put one question to the panelists. Should we call ourselves entrepreneurs? Because the whole world is talking about entrepreneurship, but they never look at artists as entrepreneurs. I think there is so much that we as individuals with no objects to really show other than our own heartbeat, our soul and our bodies, that we manage to push through and push forward. Is that the way forward as entrepreneurs, so we get our names up with the business people as well?
I think so. For me, I think even being an entrepreneur, you have to be an artist.
Yes.
You got to be really creative, you know what I mean? So I think if you can do it here, why can't you do it there? You know, it's just a question of flipping your viewpoint on it. It's a perspective. As an artist, I think you can be fluid. You have no identity. You wouldn't even call yourself an artist. You just, you know, whatever, yeah. If I have to learn that, I learn it, you know.
Anuna, for you?
There used to be, in personality development, we used to do a chapter for the students called enterprise education in school in 9th and 10th standard. And I think entrepreneurship comes from enterprise education. So anyone who needs to make anything out of life, I'm not saying necessarily money-wise, has to be an enterprising person. And for an artist, more so, because we're always in a space which has too many ifs and buts. So certainly, enterprising one needs to be.
And Mumbai is a land where people come and they make money, and they make a name, and they do things.
I would say for me, I definitely feel like an entrepreneur with the Ballet Festival. I've never done this kind of thing before, and so I'm learning, like you said, every day something new to enable it to happen. But I'm loving that journey, so yes, for sure.
Astaji?
Yes, I mean, I've been an entrepreneur in dance for decades. As I said, you know, I've gone and produced my own works when sort of organizations don't want to invite you, and it's very important that the work be seen, and especially I also owe it to the group who I work with, because they also look forward to touring. And so yes, I have also and continue to be an entrepreneur, because, you know, I still not only am involved with my group in Manipur, with my group in sort of Delhi, and also my now new group in Mumbai, you know, so yeah.
Brilliant. So we are included in the new group in Mumbai.
Can I just add?
Yes.
So maybe someday, for all you know, in Mumbai, you know, you have all these funding for these startups, and for all you know, someday an artist startup is going to be, then you're going to get angel funding for it.
It's like the
You never
Shark
know.
Tank. We can go and give a proposal on it. But I think that's a spirit of the city. That's the resilience of the city. And I think the breath that is there, it's constantly changing. And we hope that we are able to build more such platforms to have a dialogue and a conversation. So let me open up to all of you. And if there are any questions, we'll be very happy to take that. Yes.
How has the technology? I don't need it.
They're recording it, so we need it.
I just want to know how has technology impacted the scenario, dance scenario in the city? Because now you have recordings, you have better lighting, you have all kinds of projections. So this too has had an impact. Earlier you were dependent on live music mostly for the dance performances. You needed a big group. You needed the people to turn up on time, which from my personal experience, I find artists, accomplished were absolutely, you to tell them 2 hours earlier time, then only they'll turn up in time. So with all these things having taken place, and A lot more people have got into it, down to earlier it was Sobo, which had all the centers, now it's diffused all over the town. Now, this technology has helped, at least you
Reaching
talked about
out.
the resources and all that. There are certain people now, they can perform. Earlier it was very difficult. So I'd like to know how this has transformed the scene.
So I think technology has, like you rightly said, so today we have the recordings which are done, and so one doesn't do a lot of live musicians because also it depends on the budget that is actually being given to you. So live musicians depends on how much you're getting paid for, and the other thing is how much the artist is willing to pay for. To be very honest, that happens. So that's one. I think in terms of the lighting, it has improved tremendously because your whole production and the way that we put it forward, there's a lot of finesse in or sophistication in the way that we put it forward. So those lights have it. And I think sometimes what happens is that people get so used to dancing only in that light that if those light settings are not there, artists also refuse to do a particular program. So that has also happened
Because they'll say it's too dark, you can't see the face.
Yeah, that also, yes, very true. So, and then today one has the AV screens. So you have, the filming going on, animated films going on, animation, or possibly whatever the word is, the film going on, and you're dancing there. So there are times when the background screen is so overwhelming that the attention actually goes on the screen rather than the dance performance. So one is constantly, going on, working and trying to create that balance. But definitely the sound production and all that is now so much better. And one, earlier in a studio, you possibly, one needed to have all the musicians together to record. Today each one can come at their own time, do their own track, go away, and you sort of merge it. And people sound so much better when they are singing because of the way technology has improved as well.
But, technology in the West has really become a very important tool. Sometimes you see more technology on stage than you see dancers dancing. But, in the West, they always sort of had that abundance of support, and each time the creator sort of presents the work, and now what am I going to present next to get my audience sort of interested. So, and also in our country, we do not have a well-equipped stage. There isn't a single stage. I mean, I'm really sorry to say that an island like Hong Kong has, by any 5 I can speak of auditoriums which are so technically far advanced that we do not even have in our National Center for the Performing Arts. So we really can't, even if you want to, you don't. And plus, technology does cost. It costs money, and for productions, you get so little. And how many times are you going to go out of pocket? So you depend on your body to really, and your choreography, and not really depend. Yes, there's lights have become sophisticated. There are sort of things have, but not to that kind of an extent. And what you see in even like in Taipei or in Korea, I mean, these are all very advanced countries, which really has paid a lot of attention. But at times I also find that I want to see dance. I just don't want to see on the screen a line going, and then all of a sudden you see, So Merce Cunningham did a lot with technology, and it was innovative and interesting. But after a while, for me personally, as a dancer and a choreographer, I want to see bodies moving.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you. There's a question here.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for sharing your experiences. One thing I would like to know that whenever I'm being a performer myself, I see that the audience is most of the time family and friends. So in your experience, are you happy with the audience? Do you get the audience to see your production? Are you happy with the turnout in an audience? Or is it something that we have to work on still?
to have a wider spec of audience
Yes,
rather
like,
than just family
if you,
and friends.
we put in a lot, we put in money, energy, everything. But, if it is an auditorium, of course, Kala Ghoda is an exception because we have a moving audience. But otherwise, I feel personally that, this is something we have to really work on. We don't get a, good, it's not, as a performer, it's not about dancing of a family and friends always.
It's about audience building.
I think the audiences are constantly changing. They're evolving, just like we are as artists, and we need to evolve with them. So I think if you, I always feel that as an artist, as a choreographer for me, for example, if I'm creating a piece, it's very important for me to go into the other side, experience that, and then come back to see if what I'm saying makes sense. And if I have to put that at a micro level of creating or being part of a creation process in the choreographic process, then one can also look at it at a larger perspective from the evolution of the audience. And then you can also then work with your art to move with them, so you're not disconnected from them. Recently, we're talking about going back to the question on technology. Recently, I did a piece in Linz Ballet, and the piece was Yama, which is God of Death. So I wanted to use technology, interestingly, because the German audience and the Australian audience are very into technology. Everything is techno sound, and so there I would use a sound that is electronic. So I'd take electrical synapses and then link that with the synapses, the circuitry of the body as it breaks down. So you're using that rhythm, so you're still dance, but you've now drawn into technology to make it, to bring into the artist. And then I used a GoPro camera on the point of the third eye. So when Yama is looking at the dancer, the projection is intuitive, but the dancer is in physical body. So you're seeing two different dimensions of form within the same world. So you're seeing the Yama world and you're seeing the real world. So I think we have to move with the audiences. We've got to see where they're at, and we've got to keep building ourselves. We've got to grow with them.
Look, I understand that part. What I'm saying is traditional dancers, I'm talking about the classical dancers, if you're having a show, I don't see much audience, except for maybe a festival that's happening in NCPA. Otherwise, the smaller this thing, there is not much people there. You have a 200-seater or a 600-seater, very sparsing, very, very few people coming. So whether it's a Kala Ghoda is a different thing, but otherwise, have you faced something like that, or has your shows been always full? And even after being
I think it comes to with collaboration. Day before yesterday, I was met up with a classical dancer and shared the same thought. And then I said, you have an audience base, we have an audience base. We do two different things. What if we collaborate and bring your audience base to me, and I bring my audience base to you? So if we do a piece which is my kind of contemporary dance, do a folk dance company and do a classical dance company, and we 2 or 3 cities. You host me, I host you, and you host them. So, and that way we combine our audiences. Now, as soon as I get 3 audiences into one auditorium, you're getting exposed to 3 different audiences, and so am I, and so is the third dance form. So I think that's what it's about.
So you're saying that collaboration works better?
Anuna, you want to take that?
I think it's also
And
important
Asad.
to understand that, let's understand and be very practical that even to generate an audience, there is a strategy involved. That's one. Second is that even the dance itself caters to a niche background. And, when one needs to accept that. Bollywood has a different thing, and Bollywood star is not because of the dancing, it's because of the film popularity that the hero or the heroine has gotten is why one gets the pull of the audience. But dance itself doesn't cater to a very, very wide audience. So you have a niche audience. So what we are looking at is, there are 2 things here. What Mr. Lobo just spoke about is how I strategize to get the audience. Okay, but that's the collaboration. But it's important, firstly, to understand that it is always going to be a niche audience. So if my 100 or if my 50 are the people who are loving and genuinely interested in what I'm doing, so that to me should be my 200 or my 300, unless it is a ticketed show where I need to recover the cost, where the entrepreneurship is coming in, then it's a different story, because one needs to sort of do all of these things. You're aware of how it works. So, so I think once one accepts that I'm catering to a niche audience, then our comfort level within ourselves also increases to say that I'm okay with this. Otherwise, the grouse keeps happening, that why is it?
But that's That's a fair point, yeah. Yeah.
I think part of audience generation is also education. What you have to do if you have a unique art form that, or a dance form that, like when we started the opera house. I mean, opera is not a language anyone is familiar with out here except for Ashley who grew up with it. So we started these opera appreciation workshops. We did a 101, we did a 2.2. You have to educate and build an audience as you go, along with collaboration, along with social media, along with... Sorry.
So basically he's saying you have to demystify it and you have to make it more accessible.
Yeah, I mean,
And have
you
good
have
shows.
to educate people, whether you're doing it at a school level, whether you're doing it at an avid level. I mean, we do that when we're looking at niche topics. And you build it. I think I saw Shazeen in the room. Is she there? Yes.
Yes, she's waving.
So, with her, we did flamenco appreciation workshops. And, what happens is, that was one of my questions, is the Bollywood effect to dance. I mean, after that, whatever that movie was, which was the movie?
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
I mean, it put another, it's not Indian dance form, but it put it on a different kind of map and trajectory. So that's another thing. Get it placed in a Bollywood film.
Anyone else? I think...
Yeah.
Yes, gentlemen.
Well, sort of exactly what I was also trying to suggest is that while I was at IIT, we used to have this lecture demonstrations.
Spikmake in IIT.
Spikmake, exactly what I was trying to refer to. Especially in traditional dances, it's really important for the lay audience to know what is the context. I mean, even with visual arts, when I'm looking at the painting, I would love that painting if I were to know what the painter's influences were. So even with an artist, we would like to first know about the background of the artist. What are his or her motivation? What really is or his or her passion about? What the particular piece is about? And finally, if a small demonstration is possible, more of those would be really interesting. Make people appreciate art better.
I'll just add to that. IIT is a space which is also very, very culturally strong. Whether it's with the Modai in Mumbai or otherwise, and I think in a college fest again, the audience is already ready to receive. So one already has sort of ready audience, and the interest is also there. Of course, I'm not going to deny that. But as one gets out of the college thing and school, and I've done with my 10th, and now I don't know what I'm going to struggle with. And when people are working, that's when even if you want to, often people miss out on going for the programs. That's precisely what also keeps happening in Mumbai.
There's a question.
Hi. Wonderfully relevant conversations being brought up. Since I brought flamenco to India, and this is a new dance form that's descending into the city, I wanted to ask experienced artists, what advice would you give to someone to channel an art form so it doesn't come across as a Bollywoodized dilution or hybrid, because most people don't have that reference point of purity to be like, okay, this is flamenco, because immediately, even when Asad said what he was saying, thank you, Asad, is the first reference point is Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, and frankly, the song Senorita barely has any flamenco. In fact, there are a couple of scenes before that actually had some, accurate flamenco depictions. So how do you navigate, and what advice would you give someone to kind of plant an accurate reference point for a new dance form that is entering into the city?
Anyone? Ashley?
Trying to think.
The only thing, if I just step in, I would just say, Lage raho, Munna bhai, almost like that, because as I really feel there is space for everything till you do it with proper, with full integrity, and those slowly will gravitate towards it. So one has to keep at it and keep going, and not really make it into a capsule so that it's acceptable with the wider world. So that's my...
I think if I had to look at something, I think at the end of the day, people will stay with you and they'll keep growing, and the student base will grow if, as soon as they come into the space, they start to feel really connected. That can be with any dance form. And connection is connection. Once I connect with you, that's it. I want to come back for that experience, whether it's flamenco, whether it's ballet, whether it's jazz, whether it's tap, or whether it's Kathak or Bharatnatyam or Chow. It boils down to how you get them to them. And I think that's the key. That's my thought.
Okay, Ashley, thank you for the gems there. And I think Asad is going to come from my side. Ashifa, Ashley, Nona, On, and Astad. All the A's this morning I noticed. Thank you so much.
There's another A here too.
So what is the G doing in between?
Holding it all together. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the wonderful panel for this exciting discussion. Thank you, audience, for being here. A big thank you to the NGMA, Mrs. Rupa Vataram and her team for partnering with us as always. The next edition in this series is Kitsch and the City. It's on the 20th of November. As you all may have seen in that film earlier and may have been spammed today by a couple of emails, that Avid is completing its 10 years on the 27th of October. So please join us on our little digital celebration which is happening online. And thank you for your support and thank you for being there on this journey. Some of you have been with us since the beginning. And have a good night. Thank you. And remember, learning never stops.